Happy Thursday, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. I'm Alyssa Mathis with Convergent Technologies. Today's webinar we are doing is on CrowdVision, data from movement. This is a live event with Microsoft Live Events, and I have Stuart and Fiona with me. We are going to take a look really quickly at our agenda before we move forward. So on our agenda today, we're going to do introductions. We'll tell you a little bit about ourselves. Then we're going to move to CrowdVision. They're going to do their presentation on problems and solutions. And at the end, we're going to have about a 15 to 20 minute Q&A. There's a section on here where you can type in questions to ask us, and we'll read those out and we'll answer them for you. And at the end, I will also have my contact information. So if you think of anything after the fact, you're always free to reach out and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So with that being said, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Alyssa Mathis. I've worked for Convergent Technologies for over 8 years now, and I moved into the Global Account Executive for Aviation position last February. So I've been doing this for a little over a year. I focus on working with companies like CrowdVision that really do specific types of software and hardware for airports and really focus on those trends and finding solutions for our airport customers. So with that being said, I'm going to hand this over to Stuart, who is going to kick off and introduce himself, and then Fiona will also introduce herself, and they will start their presentation.
Excellent. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. Alyssa, can you just give me a confirmation that you can see the first slide?
I can, yes.
Perfect, thank you. Well, firstly, let me introduce myself. I'm Stuart Mills. I have the pleasure of being the COO and the CCO at CrowdVision. I've been with CrowdVision for about 3 years, and working with pretty much every one of the customers we have to help them get the most out of their CrowdVision solution. Majority of our customers are either airports or airlines, but that's not actually where we started. So in a few minutes, after Fiona introduces herself, I'll tell you a little bit about the background of the company, the solutions that we provide, and then I'll hand back to Fiona so she can talk about some of the things that we're doing in today's special and slightly strange environments given the COVID-19 issue. So Fiona, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can do that. I hope other people can hear slightly better than me. I have a lot of feedback from people, but I'll try and just go over it. So hi everyone, my name is Fiona Strand. I co-founded CrowdVision many years ago actually, and many years I was also CEO of the business, kind of driving it forward, various sectors that we worked in, from large scale events and through to airports, which is the primary focus today. I now act as an advisor to the company. I put on our initiatives with some of our partners and accounts, including a lot of work with the Department for Homeland Security, key airport customers around the world. So I'm delighted to meet you all.
Thank you, Fiona. So just to start off, in terms of our agenda for this call, we wanted to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do, and then probably more importantly for some of you, how we do it. And so we'll be digging into the technology a little bit. And then Fiona will take over and start talking about our new apart approach, which I think will be very valid given the current conditions out there. And then, as Alyssa mentioned earlier on, we'll leave 15 minutes-ish at the end so that we can take any questions from you. Equally, if you think of something afterwards, we're very happy for you to reach out to us directly or via Alyssa with any questions. Happy to respond to any of those for you. So in terms of CrowdVision and who we are, the company was established about 11 years ago. Fiona, who you've just met, and a colleague of ours, Anders Johansson, came together to solve a number of business problems that they were hearing about. And this really started in Mecca, and Saudi Arabian government was really our first customer. And the event you're seeing on screen now is the annual Hajj event. They have between 3 and 4 million people a day who go to pray. And we're very proud to say that we've supported them now for 11 years, and we're just ramping up for our next Hajj event, which is in the summer this year. And what we're doing here is really helping them cope with this massive number of people in a very defined space. And regardless of whether this is a site for prayer, as this is, or an airport, or any other commuter situation where there's lots of people trying to use somewhat limited facilities, CrowdVision really is a key solution to help you think about the space, how it's being used, public safety, and how your customers are being serviced. So in terms of aviation, we have a number of customers across the world. And I think the important thing here is this is both airlines and airports, and it's companies of varying sizes. So you have some of the largest airports in the world and the largest airlines in the world, down to some of the smallest. And actually, although each environment is different, they're often facing a lot of the same challenges. So any of the customers on this screen, and we've got many more beyond this, obviously would be happy to talk with you, give insight into why they selected CrowdVision, and insight into the benefits they drive from the data that the solution gives them. So in terms of what we do, and I've tried to break this down for this presentation into a number of areas, which hopefully make sense to everyone. At a simple level, we provide up to the minute accurate data on what's happening in a given space. And in our example here, it's for airports. And what this is doing is feeding public information screens. So when you turn up at the airport, giving you information about various checkpoints, whether it be check-in or security, even when you're coming back through the airport in terms of immigration, baggage claim. So giving you information about what's going on in the space, how long your wait time will need to be, etc. And that's really the kind of highest level of data. And that is consumed either through these screens in the airport or through mobile apps. So a lot of airlines and airports have apps that you can download onto your phone to find information about the airport, where your gate is, where the check-in areas are, etc. And that data can be supplemented with very valuable data from CrowdVision to help make your journey through the airport as smooth as possible. Taking it to a more of an operational level, I've got a number of dashboards to show you here. I want to start by saying that we work with each one of our customers to help them define the best dashboard for them. So this isn't a one and done. This is something that our customers get to have solid input throughout the process, and not only for a desktop or a large screen, but as I said, onto mobile devices, because as passengers want information on their mobile device as they're going through an airport, also the operations staff want to see what's happened if they're out in the airport environment rather than in their offices. So this is one of the screens for the TSA as an example. Here's key data that they want on hand, and depending on how they wish to consume the data, we update these dashboards. So in some cases, we have customers that like everything to just be in sort of numeric tables. Some customers like things to change color based on what's happening in an environment. And a lot of customers like this very sort of visual or graphic representation of data. If you take a similar dashboard for passenger experience, this is now showing you a different set of data, very much focused in on the passenger experience KPIs for the specific environment. And it's showing you quite a considerable number of data items here, but really focus in terms of wait time in queue, TSA wait time at checkpoint, and then the analysis across the bottom of how this has gone throughout the course of the day. You can see it's starting there at 7:30, relatively quiet, and it peaks and troughs during the day, as you'd probably expect. A lot of customers also ask us if we're operating in multiple environments or across multiple sites, how they can get this data into a sort of roll-up or summary view so they can understand how the operation is performing as a whole. So this could be at individual checkpoints that are of the same type, so multiple security points, for example, or it could be the flow through the airport from turn up through check-in, through security, and then departures. Equally, it could be multiple sites. So if you're an airport operator that has multiple locations, you could potentially summarize the data from each of the sites so you get a good overview to see how all the airports are doing. And you can see here we're using a very classic RAG system with the red, amber, green to indicate the stress points during the day and the balance overall. So I think a dashboard like this, and I'm showing you here ORD or Chicago O'Hare, I think this gives you a good view of all 3 checkpoints in Terminal 1. And again, with the dashboard, you can drill down into this content and investigate this further if you want to see what's been happening. As you'd expect, we also have a series of reports, and we have a reporting module as part of the solution. Supports both standardized reporting that you're seeing here and ad hoc reporting. If someone wants to just dive in and see what's been happening for the last 3 hours, they can absolutely do that. Equally, we can automate reporting so that stakeholders within an environment get a standard set of data reports on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, giving them the key information that we know they care about. So in this example here, this is a dashboard from one of our customers. You can see here, this is covering a multiple security lane setup, including the pre-queuing, the priority queuing, down to the lane level, and then the processing through the different security lanes. And then at the top of the screen, which is that sort of back area of security, you're seeing the people that are waiting, ready to move on to a different part of the airport. And again, this is the reason I'm showing this one is because this particular airport customer is very keen to make sure all stakeholders get data in the way that they like to consume it. So this dashboard is not only multi-tier, but the style of the dashboard changes as you go through, depending on how the stakeholder group want to consume their data. In this case, this stakeholder group likes this visual image, likes the red to show them where help's needed. But if we dig further into the dashboard, a lot of it becomes very tabular, and that's that particular stakeholder group. So the flexibility here to consume this data is huge, and we work very closely through every customer deployment to make sure that we really understand the key data they're driving from the system, how they want to consume it, because that is our focus as sort of data specialists. And another example here where we're showing you a retail area. Again, a number of factors here, and we actually work with this customer very closely because you can see the flow into the shopping or retail area is that sort of amber color at the moment as things are starting to get busy. And then you see the seating area in the middle, which is red. So there's a lot of occupancy there. And we know from this airport experience, as soon as they get over about 85%, then people go and grab seats. So it's quite interesting from a human behavior standpoint to understand how this space is working, not only for the people in it, but for the retailers, for the security people, etc. So it's that sort of multiple view on one set of data. So I mentioned briefly before that we can have standardized reporting. Again, we would work with you to make sure you're getting the reporting you need in the format that your stakeholder groups find it easiest to consume it. And this can often depend not only on the specific data they want, but the way that they actually consume this data. Is it on a mobile device? Is it on desktop? When and where are they trying to access this information? And very often we're asked to actually, through our APIs, to actually combine data, either consuming data from other sources to present on our dashboards, or utilizing our data and passing it through the API so the customers can actually combine it with other data sources. And the reason I've put these examples on the screen here is it's a great example from JFK in New York, where they're taking their JFK app and they're giving the passengers information about their flight and the status, but also then combining really critical CrowdVision data around which of the checkpoints are currently busiest. And this is helping not only the passenger have a better experience because they can see immediately, in this case, go to the north checkpoint because it's much quieter, but it also is helping the airport in terms of balancing the passenger traffic as they're using the facilities. So let me tell you a little bit about how we do this. And I promise I won't get too technical, but I want to give you some insight as to how this happens. So in order to provide this data, we start off the journey with commercially available digital IP cameras, whether that's Axis or Bosch or Pelco or any of the other providers out there. We take a stream of data out of the camera, normal video visuals, and it goes straight into what we call a detector or an edge device that converts that video into data. And that can either happen right at the camera or can happen in your IT comms room, and sometimes network bandwidth, etc., is a consideration. But we don't worry about the video after it's converted to data. What we're trying to get at is the data. And what that detection software is doing at that point is identifying people in a space. And so we often talk about the XYZ approach. So exactly where they are in the space and an idea of which direction they're moving in. We're not trying to track them over long distances. We're not security software. What we're trying to do is see how people are using the space and the directions they're headed. So from the processing of the video, we turn that into data, which goes into this detections database. And from that, we then have a number of things that happen, but ultimately we get to the analytical part. So how can we actually take this data and give it to the customer in a way that is very usable for them? And that could be on our dashboards or reports, as we've shown you, or through our API out to a data lake. And we have a number of customers that use our data and combine it with data from other sources and actually create their own reports based on a composite set. So to help you visualize this, I've got two examples here. Firstly, on the left-hand side, you can see we would typically be looking at a defined area within the view of the camera. So we use 360-degree cameras, so we get very wide views, and so that our customers are not having to put sensors every 3 feet. So the camera gets mounted overhead. We're not trying to detect who the people are. We're trying to detect that they're people. And as you can see on that left example, as people come into the blue area of interest, we're picking them up, we're identifying them as people, and we're understanding the direction they're flowing in. And one of the things that's important to mention here is that people flowing in and out of this space, we would evaluate everyone. So it doesn't matter whether you're 6'6" or whether you're a 3-foot child or whether you're a disabled passenger in a wheelchair. The fact is, the smarts behind the technology will make sure everyone is detected. And that's a really important factor, because some of the other technologies out in the world have very kind of severe restrictions about what they can see. The real benefit of using video and cameras is that we can see everyone. On the right-hand side, the focus is more around spatial utilization. So what we're actually doing here is creating these cones that the software is detecting when people move in and out of that space. And this is obviously a security divestment line. And so we're helping the airport and the operators, or TSA, understand how effectively this space is being used. The third part of the puzzle is also combining those two things to understand when resources are staffed. And we get asked this a lot by customers, particularly when we're looking at things like check-in areas or TDC desks in security checkpoints. And the CrowdVision solution enables them to understand whether points of service are appropriately staffed. And that obviously factors in to what they're expecting to see in terms of queuing times and wait times. And this is a quick example. We've sped up this video so that you can see what's happening. But what we're showing you here on the left-hand side is a reasonably large check-in hall. And actually, this is only part of the check-in hall. And the yellow flecks are the people moving around the space that we're detecting. On the right-hand side, I'm showing you a series of cameras and what we call a stitch. So we're telling the software that this is the areas to look at. These are the areas of interest. And this is how the different cameras are contributing to that overall picture. So it's a relatively low number of cameras. You can probably tell from the photo here, these are set fairly high into the ceiling. It's just the nature of this particular airport. For other airports where they have particularly low ceilings, things work just as well. This was just one of the examples I wanted to show today. And so in this example here, you can kind of see the points that I was making previously. You have two queuing areas marked by the blue box. So the one towards the bottom of the screen is economy passengers queuing. The one at the top is business class. And then on the right-hand side, where you can see the red and green alternating, is indicating which of these desks is staffed and which of these desks are servicing passengers. And you'll see through a sort of heat map representation, as more and more people come into this queue, and you can see the occupancy numbers in the middle of the screen there dialing up, and the queuing time then dialing up equally. And at this point, we're providing this data to the airlines and the airports so that they have an opportunity to take appropriate action. And as you can see here, more check-in desks are now active and serving more passengers as the volume builds. And this is my sort of final shot on this sequence, but really to show you what the camera is seeing on the right-hand side. That camera feed then gets passed through our AI engine to make sure all the people in the space are appropriately detected. And then our software is converting that so that the data is presented on the left-hand side onto a dashboard for you. So you're never going to see in real life this video. This is just our illustration to show you how the clever stuff behind the scenes works. The end user dashboard in front of you, you'll see here, is also not only showing you what's happening now, but again has this graph to track what's happening over a period of time. And very often we get asked by customers to layer multiple data into that graph. So not only what's happening today, but what did the graph look like 3 weeks ago, and what other activities going on in the airport. So again, the dashboards are very flexible to make sure that you're getting the right data to the right people. So I think I've appropriately covered all of these points. Happy to summarize them again, but slightly conscious of time. So I will move on and hand over to Fiona. I'll drive your slides, I believe, Fiona. So give me a nod if I'm not paying attention.
Sorry. So hi everyone, thanks Stuart. You've just had a run through sort of classic CrowdVision as it has been deployed recently for our airport customers, with a focus on, you know, measuring things like wait times and so on for customer experience. I'm sure you're all aware the world just changed, and what I'm going to talk to you about is something that we're calling CrowdVision Apart, which is our concept for how we can add value during and beyond this current pandemic crisis to help reduce the risk of disease transmission, essentially, in crowded places like airports. So if you click on Stu. So this is actually a document and can be shared, but essentially the premise is that those who are going to emerge fastest and strongest from the current crisis will focus on passenger safety and pandemic risk reduction. If you are not focusing on those things, our belief is that passengers and aviation stakeholders will not have confidence, and you'll get going less fast than you might want to as things start to get back to normal. So in this deck, we're going to present our Apart solution concept. And there's various components to this. Some of them are kind of pure CrowdVision, and some of them are things that we would need to work with our partners to deliver. The headlines are the combination of passenger safety analytics, which I'm going to talk a bit about, potentially adding in some thermal screening, and whatever combination of sensing is going on, the use of real-time interventions to help operators make decisions in the field to help manage that risk, and also the reporting of key social distancing KPIs to drive both performance reporting to build confidence, but also to drive, you know, better planning and decisions around how to change layouts and so on to reduce the risk. So all of this is really about creating confidence to get everyone flying again. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about our thinking on, Stuart, could you flick on please? Our thinking on what this is really all about, what the mission is. So our mission is to help you get flying again. Your mission is to get flying again as quickly as possible. And I think there's some key words there: soon, safely, and sustainably. So soon, we don't know how long this crisis is going to last, but it's pretty clear that there will be some pent-up demand, and there will be a hunger for everyone to get moving as quickly as possible. So we need to be ready for that rather than waiting for it. Secondly, safely. Clearly, this game has just changed and is now all about passenger safety. And thirdly, sustainably. We all hope that COVID-19 is a kind of one in a lifetime experience for many of us, but I think we're also aware that potentially we could be moving into a world defined by pandemics and disease transmission in crowded places. So we need to put in place solutions that are sustainable as well. We're committed at CrowdVision to doing our bit. We're launching a thought leadership blog. We have a lot of experience in understanding, measuring crowded places and the movement of people in crowds. So we want to get that out there to the industry. We're offering our existing customers some of these analytics just as an add-on to their existing deployments. That's something we can do extremely quickly. And then we're developing this integrated offering that we've labeled CrowdVision Apart, and which I'm going to talk you through now in a little bit more detail. Slide. So our perspective, as I said, was those who focus on protecting people from pandemics will fly again faster and further. There really is no going back. You know, we're preparing for a new normal here. So what does all of this mean? Well, first of all, passengers will only travel when they feel safe. Airlines and passengers are going to demand that airports and agencies like TSA and CBP really assure that passenger safety. And you know, we may have thought about terrorist threats in the past as being the primary thing that we, you know, wanted to have that assurance around. I think now a lot of it is going to shift to kind of general safety, removing crowding, removing queuing, and resistance to disease transmission in these environments. And of course, everyone has workforces, and everyone is concerned about the well-being and indeed the availability of workforces in this new world. So our belief is that the only way really to provide confidence and for people to recover strong is to get serious about understanding, about measuring, and about managing the risk of disease transmission across aviation, and I think particularly within airports. We, like you, I'm sure, have been doing some research into how the kind of emergency funding packages that various governments have put in place could support this, and we think that there will be a flow of funds made available to invest in this kind of risk reduction capability. But let's not hold our breath on that one. So if we move on. So our hypothesis is that safe separation KPIs are going to become extremely important. So you may be used to looking at KPI reports with things like, you know, passenger experience metrics, you know, service levels, wait times, that kind of thing, efficiency KPIs, maybe some stuff around asset utilization and so on. But the world has just changed, and we're going to have to start looking at safe separation KPIs, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So why measure and report on these things? Well, first of all, to secure the right to operate, there's going to need to be evidence flowing to regulators and to other stakeholders, so that airports essentially get permission soonest to resume operations. To win the confidence of passengers in particular, but also travel sector partners, that airports are creating a safe environment where really the risk of disease transmission is being controlled. To actually implement those safe environments, if you don't measure what's going on, you can't make the interventions, whether that's through better planning or whether it's through real-time interventions to try and distribute people more evenly, or, you know, move people away from one zone to another. So we need the data, and we need the actionability around that data to implement safe environments. And there is always going to be competition for passengers and for flight schedules and so on. And I think there is going to be something here about differentiating from other terminals, other airports, other transport mode options even, as we emerge from the COVID crisis. And then finally, maybe most importantly, actually, to future-proof, to sustain beyond the COVID-19 recovery phase, to make sure that measures are put in place to prevent, to become more prepared, and to become resilient as future pandemics threaten. So my view is that the ASQ scoring system, which airports put a lot of weight in, as you know, will have to develop over the coming weeks and months to include elements around passenger safety, as well as things like service level for passengers. So let's wait and see on that one. Okay, next slide. So this is our apart concept. Let me just talk you through it. So on the left-hand side, we've got a typical airport environment, maybe a security checkpoint or a check-in hall. And we've got two types of sensing or measuring going on. The one on the left-hand side is actually optional as far as we're concerned, but we do recognise its value. And this is the addition of thermal screening into the environment to detect elevated temperatures in passengers, maybe as they approach the terminal, enter the terminal, you know, or move through into a checkpoint. And I know lots of people are looking at this. We are not thermal camera providers, but we are quite happy to work with the outputs of these kind of systems and integrate them with the data that we produce from our own systems, so that people can have an integrated picture of what's going on. The second layer, though, the passenger separation measurement, is very much core CrowdVision. As Stuart just talked about, we already measure exactly where everyone is in real time, and we track them around the place and derive key metrics. And we are adding a layer of metrics to what we can deliver. So one of those metrics is around passenger separation, and one is around passenger exposure. And all of these metrics can be stored in the normal way to our databases and presented to users through live tools, like in the middle box here, alerts. So alerts saying, you know, we've got a problem building up in this area, go and intervene. Maybe live dashboards to bring it to life. And also then the data over time needs to be combined and reported, KPI reports, so that people can derive learnings from what's going on and start to intervene through better planning, better resource management and so on to reduce risk in these environments. So what sort of interventions can anyone make with this data? Is it actually useful? So over on the right-hand side here, there's some live interventions that can be made. So first of all, we can filter out any high-risk passengers. So there's some risk segmentation going on here, and potentially handle those passengers slightly differently. They may be symptomatic, they may need to have further checks with more invasive technologies, they may need to be treated differently through a process or a screening process. And the second thing that can happen in the live environment is to actually enforce physical separation. So maybe you get an alert or a dashboard flashing red saying, there's an issue in check-in zone A. What do you need to do? You need to take some action to try and either put more staff on there or to spread people out in some way. So those are the type of live interventions we have in mind. Secondly, the data aggregated over time, accumulated over time around crowding and around the separation kind of measurements can be used to change resourcing levels. So let's make sure we've got enough staff on at the right times of day, enough lanes open and desks available and kiosks available to really manage those peaks and try and reduce them. I mean, really the game we should be in here is to try to remove queues and remove crowding and spread people around so that we don't get clusters of people breaching those separation guidelines. Secondly, changing layouts and processes to maximize the separation. So don't, if you're a TSA, don't have two lanes open next to each other, have them spread out a bit more, that kind of thing. Training staff is critical. Staff will need to make sure they maintain separation between themselves and other staff members and also between passengers. So there's an education process here. And then finally, the whole game of continuous improvement and learning. So measure, understand, change things, measure again, repeat and improve, essentially is the message here. I think a key takeaway is whoever you are, whichever region you're in, whichever regulatory framework you're operating in, there's going to need to be some reporting of safety compliance, just as there is in the world of health and safety more generally. So having data to evidence those reports is going to be critical to essentially gain permission and achieve that confidence level that people are going to want to see going forwards. Okay, move on. I'm not going to talk about this very detailed slide in any detail, but I do just want to highlight the key message, which is this: we're not just doing this for the next few weeks. This isn't only a response that we're dealing with here. It's not just about filtering out some high-risk people and maybe trying to enforce social distancing in the short term. It's really about having data to drive us through that recovery so that we have the means to really manage risk, to reduce crowding, to reduce queuing, and to maintain guaranteed levels of separation between people in these crowded environments. And it's to create resilience. So the key thing here is that you end up back really where we started, which is there is an efficiency play here as well. If you can make sure we've always got the right number of staff on to deal with the right number of passengers at the right type of day, we have the right capacity and the right assets allocated, then we can actually keep people moving, remove the queuing, and in doing so we deliver better customer service, lower wait times, but also increased resilience to these kind of new threats, new challenges of disease transmission. Next slide. So CrowdVision, we feel it's our duty actually to think about how we can support the sector in this difficult time. We have a few things going for us, and the two I want to draw out really understand crowding. We founded this business measuring millions of pilgrims going through the Hajj pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia. We supported the London Olympics. We've been working in events like music festivals and so on for many years. We know what real crowding looks like. We know how to measure it, and we're not just about tracking one or two people through processes. So also our CTO, Anders Johansson, the co-founder of the business, has actually been working in the academic community looking at disease transmission in crowds for a number of years as well. So we have real sort of knowledge in the business about this and really understand it deep down. We also, though, have a strong track record of measuring people in airports. We understand airports, we have domain expertise, we have plenty of experience in that space. So we feel actually that we're uniquely positioned right now to work with our partners and with our customers to try to make a real change and impact in these difficult times. Next slide. So what we're doing, just in a little more detail, is we're measuring social distancing and physical separation. So we're starting with the science of the transmission of diseases in crowded places, the understanding of the key parameters there. And then we've derived two types of analytic that we're going to start delivering. One is a passenger exposure measurement. So this is a measurement of the extent to which passengers have been exposed to other people, how long they've been exposed for, and what level of risk that represents of disease transmission. And that obviously needs to be tuned to things like the particular disease and location. And then secondly, the passenger separation levels. So this is making sure that in real time, if people are getting too close to each other, we have a measure of that, a way to alert it, and people can take action. So those are the two primary metrics that we see. And the metrics will all be written to databases. We see reporting happening really at two levels. One is reporting per population of people. So I'm just going to bring that to life for you a little bit. A population of people could be the people that are in a particular check-in queue, in a particular security checkpoint, in a particular retail unit. And that population can be there right now, or it can be the population that's been in those environments over the last 5 minutes or 15 minutes or hour or day. So it's a population of passengers. And we think that the reporting needs to be at this population level. It can be in real time, and there's a little mock-up on the left-hand side there of, you might want to report in real time for, say, a particular check-in zone, what percentage of the passengers are too close to each other or are safely separated. So that's what we're talking about there. That could trigger alerts and so on. On the right-hand side, thinking more about the reporting of data over time, and showing levels of risk. So green means that people haven't been exposed, haven't been too close to each other, whereas you can see that there's a bar in the middle there where things obviously got a little bit crowded. If you move to the next slide. So you can report at that kind of population level, which is, per zone, per time period, but also if you've got a big venue that you're managing, whether that's an airport or not, you need to be able to look across the whole piece to report at the venue level. And we have in mind here the same kind of dashboards for these analytics as we use for things like wait times today, but this time we're using red, amber and green colouring to differentiate between, safe separation, low risk and high risk separation, for example. And on the right hand side, you can see the kind of idea we have here around being able to report these as KPIs so that you can zoom into the red areas and see that, check-in area C there was particularly problematic early in the morning, and that's probably an area that would require some attention in terms of replanning how that check-in activity is going to be resourced going forwards. Next one. So that's actually all I wanted to say. We do have a lot more. This is a fast-moving space, and we're working on developing this capability as we speak and piloting it in some of our existing customer airports. But we'd be delighted to hear from anyone who is interested in finding out more, or indeed in deploying this capability during the recovery period. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona and Stuart. That was really great. We are now going to take a quick look. I wanted to show that you guys are actually on 3 of our procurement vehicles at this point in time. So those 3 vehicles, we can see really quickly, hold on, are right here. So these 3 vehicles are the procurement vehicles that, if you're an airport, you might know about these, you might not, but procurement vehicles are vehicles that are pre-bid, so that instead of having to go through a lengthy and expensive RFP process, airports and other customers can get what they need and still fulfill that bid requirement that a lot of them have. So Convergint has many of these, and 3 of our main national ones are Sourcewell, Omnia, which used to be National IPA, and NCPA. These 3, we have CrowdVision on all 3 of them at this point in time, so you can purchase them without having to go to RFP if it is something you are looking to do. With that being said, we will now move to the Q&A section so that we'll take any questions. And we already have a question that came in. So either Stuart or Fiona, whoever wants to kind of take this one on. We were asked if CrowdVision has been approved by Safe Skies at this point.
So my understanding is no, we haven't, but it is a scheme that we are looking at. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. So some of our other questions that we got, someone asked what type of cameras can be used to do their projects or get the data that you need in their airport.
Yeah, happy to answer that. And I did mention it briefly in the presentation. We work with digital IP cameras, so we can work with each airport to determine what fits into their current infrastructure. We work with, a lot of them we already have done, the Bosch, the Pelco, the Axis. Axis in particular is a very popular one at the moment. So for us, it's just about the quality of the video coming out of it that can then flow through the software to do the right level of detection and give accurate data at the end. So regardless of which camera, we can work with the airport. A lot of airports now, we're noticing, are selecting a variety of different providers for their cameras. So again, just a quick discussion. We don't specify any particular camera because we want to keep that choice with the airport.
Good to know. Thanks, Stuart. With that being said, there was also a question on where the data is transformed. So is it on the edge? Is it on a server on site? Is it up in the cloud? Can one of you answer that question as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first point to make from that question is that the CrowdVision solution can be deployed fully on-premise within the boundaries of your IT networks, or it can be in a cloud edge configuration. So the processing of the video stream and turning that into data, typically in a cloud edge, will happen right at the edge device, and these can be installed next to the camera, or they can be off in a comms room somewhere. So it's that part of the detection software that is converting the video into data and doing the clever stuff to actually define who's in the space and how they're moving. So it's really, we like that to be the customer's choice. I know a lot of people are going cloud edge now. So the edge devices are on site in the airport next to the cameras. The data comes out of those and is passed up to an instance, a secure instance in the Amazon cloud. We still have customers who are on premise, so the data actually goes to a service on a server and it's converted there. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible to align with whichever of the airport's sort of preferences in terms of their IT infrastructure.
Just maybe, sorry, to add one point to that as well, because it's a question we always get asked, so I'll preempt it. If you do go for the edge solution, then the whole thing is PoE, and basically the PoE cable both powers the edge processor, and then there's flow through network and power to the camera. So the installation process is short, sharp and sweet, and there's no need for any mains power till you get back to the sort of switching environment.
Yeah, great point. Thank you.
Awesome. And Stuart, earlier in the presentation, you had talked about the high ceilings, but that you could also do an airport with low ceilings. What is the big difference that you kind of see between the high ceilings and the low ceilings, and what the airport would need to consider from those different setups?
Yeah, for us, so obviously a number of our customers have very high ceilings, a number have very low ceilings. For us, it's more about the space. So one of the things that we would always do is aim to sort of come and visit a customer on site, understand the space, and then put forward a recommendation for the number of cameras that would actually be covering that space. So it's not necessarily a high or low thing. That is definitely an element, but it can also be about what else is in the space. So we like to see the space, see how it operates, and then we put forward a recommendation to the customer in terms of what's the right number for the space they're talking about. And because very often we're deployed throughout the airport, one sort of physical environment can be very different to the next. So very often you're actually considering those different points in a single airport or a single terminal. So it's not a barrier at all. I think a lot of the older airports have very low spaces within them. A lot of the new very sort of large glass boxes have very high ceilings, but again, may have a lot of retail or other structural items that we have to consider when we're positioning. So it's a simple task, and we're very happy to pop out and meet with customers and talk about what would work best in their space.
So another question that we would have you guys answer is if you are piloting the social distancing analytics anywhere at this point.
Okay, I'll take that one. The answer is nearly actually on that. So I just came off another call with one of our existing customers, and we now have several of our existing customers extremely interested in adding this layer of analytics, into their existing deployments. Obviously, that doesn't need any on-site visits or anything from us, so it's something that we can implement extremely rapidly. And yeah, I mean, as soon as people can get back into airports and start installing cameras and so on, then our focus will shift towards people with new camera installations. But yes, we are all about to pilot in 2 large US airports.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions at this point that have come in. If anyone wants to send in any questions, do so now. On the screen, I have also shown my email address and my phone number. So if you have any additional questions that you think of after the fact, please feel free to reach out through either, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But I think that'll conclude our live event for today. Thank you, Fiona, and thank you, Stuart, for joining. It was a pleasure having you present, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.